tab 1. For this tech book, we actually aren't going to be in Explore tab 2 or Explore More Resources. So this is the only sub-tab that we're going to do, and we're going to go over it right now. So how are photosynthesis and cell respiration related? Well, an autotroph is some kind of organism that makes food for itself. So an organism that can just sit there and make its own food. Can we do that? No, we're not an autotroph. We are what's called a heterotroph. So we have to go and um, eat something else to get our food. Otherwise, if we were an autotroph, we would be able to go out into the sun and just make our own food just from standing outside. Instead of going and getting a tan, we would get a green because we would be photosynthetic. And that's not what we can do. So we are actually autotrophs. So this process is done through photosynthesis, and there's certain organisms that can do that. They do it by basically harnessing solar energy and using that energy to complete that reaction. So again, the reactants for that, what they're using to as the chemicals that will react are carbon dioxide, and they are using water. Okay, so they're using carbon dioxide and they're using water. Now they mix those together, but on their own, those two things won't just spontaneously turn into sugars and oxygens. So we need some kind of energy source, and that energy comes from the sun. And the sun is a giant nuclear bomb in the sky that's letting off constant radiation. That's why it can actually give you a sunburn, but it's giving off constant radiation energy, and that plants have methods for harnessing that and turning it into carbohydrates that they store as sugars for us. And then they also make oxygen. So we need their carbohydrates that they make, and we need their oxygen that they make. So we need to love plants and be grateful, because there's this never-ending cycle between the two sets of organisms where we are always depending on them, but they're depending on us not as much. But for carbon dioxide, other stuff would make carbon dioxide if we didn't exist. But that's neither here nor there. So plants are the main photosynthetic organisms, but there are actually a few. There's algae, some archaea, and bacteria. Archaea are like single-celled organisms that they have like a complicated RNA compared to bacteria, but I mean it's sort of like a bacteria almost, and that's going to be mostly in the waters, mostly in fresh water, but even in marine layers, in the top levels where light can get through, it will be there. And scientists do believe that those types of organisms were around millions of years before anything that needed oxygen was around to build the oxygen in the atmosphere. So there is a picture of a sugar, aka a carbohydrate, which is a very energy-packed molecule. So here is one of the tech book features where they have a drag and drop. This is just an item for you to go through and see how you can do. I want to point out that you can clear your answers to the side. We might do that once or twice and see how that goes. So here's 3 processes that it says. It says photosynthesis, cell respiration, and both photosynthesis and cell respiration. So we're going to sort these right here based on what we've already learned. Okay, so we're thinking about what requires carbon dioxide as a reactant. Are plants for photosynthesis using the carbon dioxide, or do we use the carbon dioxide in cell respiration? Because cell respiration is what we're doing. Photosynthesis is what the plants are doing. So when you see photosynthesis, I want you to think about the P in the photosynthesis is sort of like plants, and the C in cell respiration, I don't know, could be like your cat or something. Or if your name is Carl, then here we go. So for requiring carbon dioxide, well, we don't require carbon dioxide. In fact, it's a poison to us. We actually release it from our body because it's a poison. So I'm going to put this solidly over in the photosynthesis. Okay, requires or produces oxygen. Who actually produces and makes oxygen? Is that the plants, or is that Carl the cat that is producing oxygen? Carl the cat is not producing oxygen. Carl is using oxygen, so we're going to put this in photosynthesis. Okay, the reactions include C6H12O6, which is a sugar, and water. Okay, well, we know that since it's saying reactions, it's probably talking about two different types of reactions. And C6H12O6 is over here on the cell respiration, and water gets used in photosynthesis. So I'm going to just guess and put this in both, but we might come back to that. All right, involves ATP. That means like it basically has an energy source, okay? So that for now I'm going to tell you is over here. Then requires oxygen. Who requires oxygen? Carl the cat or plants? Carl requires oxygen, right? All right, so produces carbohydrates in the end. Who makes carbohydrates? Who makes carbohydrates? Do humans make carbohydrates? Or sorry, Carl the cat. Is Carl the cat producing carbohydrates, or are plants making carbs? Plants make carbs for us, okay? And uses energy. Which one of these uses energy? Well, you know photosynthesis is using a ton of energy to happen, and it's coming from the, where is the energy coming from? It's coming from the sun. Okay, requires carbs. Which one requires carbs as its food? It is Carl the cat requires carbs, like some kind of food source like that. Produces carbon dioxide. Yep, Carl the cat is also producing carbon dioxide. And releases energy. Yep, when Carl the cat is breaking down those carbs, that's releasing energy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go down here and submit that and check it, and boom, we got it all right. Now say we get one wrong, or say we want to practice that again, it doesn't matter. As your teacher, I actually can see which of these assignments you've done, and I can see how well you did. Okay, now whether or not I grade you on that, I would let you know ahead of time. But if you want to do your best and keep continuing to learn, you could always clear your answers. And it just says, are you sure you want to clear all your answers? And you said, yeah, I want to try this again. That was fun, man. I'm so bored. That was fun. Okay, so then you can actually try that again, and it looks like it's resetting here. Okay, and so then say willy-nilly, I just put these wherever, and I go and submit it. It's going to tell me what I did wrong, and it's going to allow me to try again. Okay, as far as I know, I don't have any limits set on that, so you can keep going back and working on that as you go. Okay, so photosynthesis starts with reactants, which is water and carbon dioxide, and then uses energy from the sun to convert it into sugar and oxygen, which means photosynthesis is basically an endothermic, endo meaning taking in, and therm meaning like heat or energy. It basically is a reaction that uses up energy. Endothermic, it's taking in energy. And as you can probably guess, on the opposite side, we, Carl the cat, are actually exothermic, where we are just like bursting out with all this energy that we're shooting off into the environment because we're not like taking it in or like, you know, like storing energy in a lot of ways. Okay. So the main pigment in plant cells is chlorophyll, and that absorbs most of the visible light spectrum except for green. Green, it's reflecting off, which is why we see plants as the color green. I want to point you in the chemical reaction equation for photosynthesis. I say this a few times throughout the chapter, but this 6 is sort of like having parentheses around this, if this was a math like algebra problem, where this 6 gets multiplied by everything after it. So as you can see, this 6 would then mean there's 6 carbons, but there's also 6 O2s. And that O2 is an oxygen, but do you see how it has that subscript of 2? That means you multiply the 6 times the 2, and you actually have 6 times 2 is 12. You actually have 12 oxygens. So you have 6 carbons here, but you have 6 times 2 oxygens, so you have 12 oxygens. Okay, using that same math here, we have 6 times H2. So how many hydrogens do you think there are? 6 times 2 is 12. There's 12 hydrogens. And then that 6 also gets multiplied by everything after it. So there's 6 O's, which is oxygen. 6 O's, it means there's 6 oxygens. Now here, there's not a number out in front, so it's just an assumed 1. So you can just take it at face value. C6 means there's carbons, there's 6 carbons. How many hydrogens here? $12. And then there's how many oxygens here? 6 oxygens. But then here, I apologize, here, my oxygen here on the end also has a 6 times 2, so has 12 oxygens at the end. If you added these all up on both sides, they would have the same number of carbons on this side as on this side. They have the same number of hydrogens on this side as they do on this side. They have the same number of oxygens on both sides if you added them up. That's because the reactants and the products are always equal with law of conservation of mass, okay, that nothing is lost there. Going down, cell respiration is actually the opposite of photosynthesis, and those two processes feed each other in a never-ending cycle. And we will learn a little bit more about that at the end of, there's a whole separate chapter on cell respiration, but basically to make that process happen, you have molecules of ATP, which are energy, to make all the cell activity that goes on in cells for growth, reproduction, homeostasis. ATP is the energy molecule that is given off by our bodies when we break down carbs. And then the end of this section is just basically the answer key, almost, to the questions that we filled in up here. So I'm going to end there, and then we'll just move on to the next lesson.